Hi, welcome. Today we're going to talk with Pixie Jarvis. She has been studying trauma for a great deal of time and has a wonderful array of experiences to share with us about her horses. She has her own horse farm, and she has studied and learned a great deal about how trauma can be an intervention of sorts through horses. So we're going to talk with her now. So please join me as we have Pixie Jarvis. Hi, Pixie. How are you
Hey,
today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad you came to do this interview because we are professional friends and we're personal friends, and we are together studying some of the things that interfere in our lives as adults and teenagers. And I first got to know you when our school district had a program that you came along and brought to our attention where you're able to help teenagers who've dealt with trauma. And I'm very excited to hear more about what trauma is. And I think our definition of trauma can be kind of vague for some folks, and or it could be too specific. Some people think trauma is only when you come home from war or you've been in a terrible calamity, but there are a lot more types of trauma, and I've learned a lot from my school district and the trainings I've had for school, but I know that you have really studied it specifically and you've learned that technique of working with horses. So I'd love to hear about what you think is a good, proper way of looking at trauma. And, you can talk to us about what you have learned and how you've been able to intervene with students.
Thank you. When you said I was an expert, but I'm not, but I'm learning from experts. And I'd just like to say that for myself, that I'm a student. I consider myself a student of learning about trauma because there's so much to learn. But what I am trying to work towards is be able to talk about it in more simple ways because that's how I needed to learn it and that's how I am learning it. So for me, I will say there's an organization I'm currently training with called Natural Life and Ship Institute. I really love this organization and how they are teaching econ professionals like myself to be trauma-informed econ professionals. Um, I'll just say quickly, what I do practice is equine assisted learning, which is it's partnering with horses and building a relationship with the horses to learn life skills. So it's basically, even for me, just in my relationship with my horses, how I show up and communicate with them helps me in my human relationships. So it's transferring what we do in the sessions to all relationships. So from my learning with them, trauma basically, at the most basic form, is its dysregulation in my nervous system, which maybe like, what in the world does that mean? But I will say I was confused for a long time because I thought trauma was the event. You'd hear trauma and automatically, like you said, I would think of, a war, like someone in a service person in war and what they witnessed. And that is absolutely a traumatic event. Or I think of someone who's had horrific assault, personal assault, whether it's just physical assault, sexual assault. But that's usually what first pops in my mind, and absolutely those are traumatic events. But now I understand that trauma is not the event. Trauma is our response in our body to what happens in our life. So for me, just even in my own life, things that I've been through, understanding, I'm okay to share that I've dealt with anxiety a lot in my life, and I didn't always understand that. I understand now that is trauma showing up in my body. And it's really about our nervous system. The way we were created, it's to protect us, it's to take care of us, but sometimes due to events in our lives, it can get kind of stuck in our nervous system. It's very, very simplified way to talk about it. But again, that's the way I know this is in the simplified form, because I'm reading a lot by people like neurobiologists, and I'm like, a lot of it seems really complicated, but I'm trying to learn it at just a really basic level to help myself and others. So that's, so our nervous system, which is more our brain, and we have this thing called the vagus nerve that connects to all our body parts. So that's why we know chronic stress impacts so many parts of our body. So it's really the mind-body connection and understanding things that are stored in that alarm system in my body. My brain, which is part of my body, but it will start informing. And so now I understand it's sensations that we have first. Then that causes feelings that come up in us. Then, until we understand that, it can cause reactions. So like I think of times in my life where I just went around reacting, but it was because my body was alarming inside and I just didn't understand that, how it actually works. So it's really body sensation. Then that starts to feel that, then you start having feelings come up and then react. And so once you understand that, then you can learn what we call co-regulation. And, that's what happens with a baby. So when babies can't regulate themselves, so caregivers pick them up, rock them, help them learn to regulate their body. That's co-regulation. Another, sentient being, a human is there providing regulation for that baby. And so that's something to realize. But like as an adult, no one could pick me up and rock me right. But I can have like someone in my presence that helps me regulate. So that's why there's one person who talked about co-regulation is self-regulation is internalized co-regulation. So learning to get calmer inside, make better choices.
So your interest in teenagers is really part of what was fascinating to me, because a lot of the teenagers we deal with in the school system especially have chronic stress, and that chronic problems at home or what have you in their neighborhood and peer issues have brought on lots of behavior challenges for them, and they're trying to regulate, but they don't know how to regulate necessarily. Is that correct? And then when you work through the horses in your program, you're teaching them how to be more sensitive to the needs of another being. Is that correct?
Yes. And and I'll share how I even got into this. Like what started this for me is many years ago. I was just where I was at in life. I started going to weekly support group meetings. It's something I just needed to work on. That all like self, like learning that growth, like the personal growth. And I still go all these years later. I still go weekly to meetings because that's part of me undoing things from my past. And it's it's that thing of if it happens over a long period of time, it doesn't come undone quickly. And it's something I just love for my life that I keep showing up in those meetings. So, but about the time that I started, it's funny to me now because it's interesting, but about the time I started going to the meetings weekly, I also had one of my horses, and we were having, a relationship problem. One day I was walking him out to his pasture, and he swung around and bit my arm. I mean, it didn't draw blood, but I had a good bruise there, and it shocked me. I was not, did not know that was going to happen. Looking back, I could see there were little signs all along that was escalating to that. But that was a pattern in my life that people or horses, they would show me things, but I didn't pay attention. So when that happened, I was like, okay, I need to get some help, with this horse, training this horse. So initially I went to someone who, doesn't do this specific work that I'm doing today, but I realized it was some of that was in there. So we started I'd already been riding this horse, but we started the relationship completely over from the ground. So I did what's called groundwork. So I did a lot of communicating with my horse, making requests, and we're doing it, like I said, on the ground and just communicating that way. Well, I started seeing, like I would go there once a week, do that with my horse, and then go to my support group meetings this week. And there was a common theme that kept coming up. Like for one thing, I would say what I mean, but I didn't mean what I said. I didn't verbalize, or with my horse, I might, show that I wanted something, but I didn't back it up in my actions. And so that's not fair to people around me if I was kind of wishy-washy about, what I didn't. I think part is I didn't even know really what I wanted, but that's confusing in relationships. Today I know that boundaries are defined because, if I let someone know it's okay and not okay with me, it's okay in the relationship, but like I might do something, let it slide, then get really frustrated, when, I let it go all these times back here. So I had to see my side of it. Like, okay, I'm not giving clear communication about what's okay. And that's what I had done with my horse. And, and so learning those kind of, I don't know, it was just fascinating because I go to my meetings. I was like, wow, this is, when I was learning about myself and my human relationships, it's like, these are the same issues I'm having with my horse. So around that time, I started investigating because I thought, this is fascinating. I wonder if, there's people who work with horses to understand, our human behavior and human relationships. And back then, there wasn't as much out there. It's a growing field. It really is. Because I, as an equine professional through equine assisted learning, I'm also being trained to partner with therapists, to offer equine assisted psychotherapy. That's a big field as well. I personally can't do that because I'm not a licensed mental health professional, but I'm being trained to where I can. So like you came out, you are a licensed mental health professional. So you and I together with the kids, and that's what I love, is talking with you and getting your feedback, because I admire what all that you all do in our world to help us all just be better human beings, in general in our world. So anyway, so that's kind of how I first got drawn into all this, and then over time I started looking. I did go, and you mentioned that I worked at the time. I couldn't really find anyone doing that specifically, so I found New Beginnings Therapeutic Writing. So I started volunteering there, and I loved that time there. And I did become an instructor there, and I'm still a PATH certified instructor. And I love that work. That was more about, we had more of a task focus, meaning like we were giving writing lessons, adaptive writing lessons. And again, we did touch on behavior, but that wasn't the focus as much. And so I knew this is what I really wanted to do, where I'm at now, and as I moved forward, I wanted to focus more on. So with the sessions we're talking about, we do not ride the horses. This is not riding lessons. There are some ways you can incorporate riding, but it's still not about riding lessons. It's not about, you do X, Y, Z to go. It's no. The number one thing is relationship. We're building relationship, and it's just a different way of looking at it.
I was just wondering, what kind of topics did you use most when we worked with the horses? I know trust was one of those, and you had several in succession that we would deal with, and you had the neatest activities set up, obstacle courses and things like that. So I think that would be neat to share just a tad about, what kind of things you do that impact those kids.
With the horses, I'll just say, horses are prey animals. So the way they show up in the world, they are more hypervigilant. They live in a world where they have to just continually be aware of their environment. But if you think about that, much like someone who is living in a traumatic environment where every day they don't know if they're safe or not, they're having to, they're very aware of body language, and that's both the human and the horse situations. So it's like you're continually looking for something threatening. And that's in the lower region of our brain. It's our survival area of our brain. It's really important to me that people know this has zero to do with intelligence, because the rational, intelligent part of our brain goes offline often when we're in threat environment. So it's not about intelligence; it's about survival. People that are experiencing trauma are in survival. Like we say, thrive or survive. They're in survive. So with the kids, part of what we want to look at is how do we show up in a relationship. So oftentimes with the horses, I had that they were loose. We were in a big arena. We had lots of adults there to keep, safety is obviously very important. But I didn't have it where the horses had, like, it wasn't about making a horse do something.
Right.
A big thing I'm learning is the difference between compliance and cooperation. So I see cooperation, instead of, I'm going to make this horse comply. Well, in a human world, that if kids were doing that to each other, that would be bullying, right?
That's right.
Going in, I'm going to make you do what I want, and so connection and control, they can't happen at the same time. If I'm seeking connection, then I'm not there to control you, because when I control, I'm objectifying you.
That is the neatest thing I've heard, because, the more these kids who have behavioral problems, the more they have problems, the more teachers and all of us in the education system seem to be on guard ourselves, which gets us riled up, and that back and forth, and I'm sure with a parent as well. And that's exactly how we're viewing it. We need to control this human being. Yes. We need them to comply.
Yes.
And the problem is, we need to make sure that we're looking at it from the different perspective, right? What has happened to them, not what's wrong with them. As you've talked about, that's one of the neatest parts of this, is the perspective and the view, right?
Yes. Yes. I mean, I'll even, again, I'm listening to lots of different experts as I learn, and I've heard them talk about secondary trauma. So, I mean, I know people in the helping field who, because here's the thing, our nervous systems feed off each other. So yes. I think about that for you all, in those rooms, classrooms, or in the, counseling sessions. That's something for you all as well, to help yourselves with your nervous systems, because absolutely, you get a lot of dysregulated kids. And that's something I work on too. When y'all were out here, the horses, the kids, I have to continually work on myself if I'm going to show up. If I show up dysregulated, aggravated, whatever, it's just so hard. So that's that thing about where I said earlier about, as an infant, there's an adult that can be a calmer person. I think of it as an anchor. Like with my horse, if my horses get dysregulated, I want to be an anchor for them.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's like, can the adult,
like the home base? Yeah.
Yeah, can we be an anchor? And it's hard. It's easier said than done, because I know for myself, like I said, I deal with anxiety, and I can feel myself getting, so what can I do to help myself so I don't join in the dysregulation, and finding ways to help, because I love working with kids, and also adults too. I would love to be able to maybe offer things like that for adults who even are working with kids like that, just ways to practice regulating activities. And like I said, the horses, what I love about them is they're very much in the moment. So they don't worry about hurting my feelings.
Yeah.
They don't judge me either. Like, they don't say, you're a hot mess today. Like, they don't judge me. I show up, because they let me know if I'm a little dysregulated, because I can do that too. I'm either in yesterday, like I'm regretting something, or thinking about something that happened yesterday, or I'm worried about tomorrow. Either way, my head and body's not at the same place. And that's predatory for a horse, because predators, if you think about it, predators, when they come in, they try to show on the outside, everything's fine, I'm not going to hurt you, but inside, that internal, and so on that regulations, but when their internal energy is way up, because they're getting ready to attack and pounce. So prey animals, not just horses, but that's why they're so sensitive to that, because it's predatory. So if I show up in their environment, and my head and body, the fancy word is congruent, so if I'm incongruent, like my inside and outside doesn't match, that's suspicious for them, and that's uncomfortable. Like they don't trust that. So, and I have to check myself. So that's something I'm working on a lot more in my life. Even before I go out to interact with my horses, take a moment, check in with myself, where am I at in that moment? But that's not just something good for horse relationships, right? That's good for human relationships as well, because we come in with our stuff, and we're unaware, and then we just kind of project it out on the people around us.
Is that like triggers? Is that kind of what you're talking about there? Knowing triggers or sensing?
Yeah, and again, that's where, I'm still learning as well. Like, I hear if someone being triggered or activated, Like for me, that could be, looking in my life, like where I've had unhealthy relationships in my past, where that was over a period of time. So, versus like, let's say you have a really bad car accident, a traumatic car accident. That has a beginning, a middle, going through it, and so like that traumatic event resolves itself versus something where it's repetitive, and so what's happening in our brain is that survival part of our brain. It's really meant to just get us through a situation and then be over. And, then we just move on with our life. But, there's a lot of things in it. I mean, just right now we're in a pandemic. We're all going through this sense of daily, dysregulate. Because that's the thing about the dysregulation in our body. When things are more like predictable, pattern, rhythmic.
We let our guard down, don't we?
Or what I was getting at is like a healthy relationship has those parts. It's predictable. Like I know what to expect from you. So like coming on here today, I knew you weren't going to yell and scream at me. So I interrupt you enough. I know what to expect. So I felt safe.
Good.
Here, that's something else I hear a lot about. It's called the felt sense of safety. Meaning, you see me, you hear me, you feel me, you get me, or whatever. But it's like showing up in relationships where it's safe to be who I am and you are who you are, and it's predictable. The outside world around us may be unpredictable, but I know I can show up and you're not going to whatever. But then think of relationships where you're on eggshells all the time.
Yes.
Because you never know what to expect. So like to me, that is the trauma in your body. That's like, trauma activating. So so today I noticed that if I'm around someone, that's like my little internal radar goes off. Like I'm feeling like I'm walking on eggshells. Today I can look at, well, is that old memories stored in my survival area of my brain? Being activated, triggering. Is that really what's going on here? Or maybe it really is. So I look at my past where there were times that I didn't listen to that. I kept repeating old patterns, because again, that part of our brain, I've heard what fires together, wires together, meaning our neurons and stuff. So like if we keep doing these certain patterns of behavior, relationships in my life, that gets stronger. It's just like if I go work out at the gym and I build up a certain muscle, that muscle is going to get stronger. So those pathways in my brain, if I keep staying in certain behaviors, it's going to get stronger, in me. But on the flip side of that, sometimes there's things that I needed to pay attention to that were, definitely red flags. Like today, I consider that my intuition, but like today, I listen to that more. I used to think, just be nice, don't pay attention to that, So to me, it's like, what is a real red flag that maybe I do need to reevaluate while I'm showing up, or what is something from the past? And so I'll give a word out for therapy. I personally have gone through therapy and I advocate for that, and I feel no shame for that, because there were some things that when some things started coming up and I thought I need to dig a little even deeper. I mean, like, yes, I still go to support group meetings, but I even needed a little extra help. There's no shame in that. So I went to a therapist to process things from my past to understand that more. So I absolutely advocate for that. So this is another reason I want to be able to speak up and talk about these things, because I don't want there to be shame around it. This is, I think I said that to you. It's like I live in Kentucky where I have allergies, and this is a terrible place for someone that has allergies. But I don't like beating myself up for sneezing because I know I have allergies. So like knowing that I have some anxiety over things that's happened. Like you said, there's nothing wrong with me. Some things happen, and so just like I have allergies, it's not something inherently wrong with me. It's something that I can learn to manage. And my allergies, my anxiety, they're not everything about me. They're just one little part of who I am, and it's part of just growth in my own life to just look at it. And like if I had diabetes or anything else, it's just a part of who I am. and you can go and learn to manage it. And there's lots of different ways out there these days.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to take away the stigma. If there's something wrong with you if you've got to do that. No, there isn't. In fact, I have those people who are doing that. That's, you've got courage and you're doing something that's helping everybody. Because the more I help and understand myself, the less I'm like throwing it out there around people around me. So I just want to take away that fear.
Oh, yes. And I think, that's exactly what we do when we work with these students, or we as adults need to learn to grow every day and have that same humble and teachable spirit that you have to be able to improve ourselves and think back of patterns. And, the kids that I've worked with, you've worked with, they can have a rewiring in their own brain network, and the neurology is very supportive of an early age person being able to improve that pathway. And those of us like me who are old, we could still make some improvement, hopefully.
Yes.
I'm still learning and growing, and believe I'm learning from lots of mistakes in my life. I've really definitely found myself growing even now. So, and I hope to keep growing, but
that is the good news. I think the old way used to say, once something happened, there was no hope, but that's not true. There is hope. Like even at my age, I'm 50 years old, and I'm still continually doing these things because I know this helps me. So it's not. Yeah, I mean, it's not just for kids. I mean, it's all of us. That yes, we absolutely can continue to grow and get healthier mentally. It affects us physically too. It's all connected.
Yeah, and your spirituality, I think you've mentioned that in the past too, and I'll let you comment about that too before we wrap up, but I know that you really want, and anything else that you'd like to mention when it comes to trauma and our introduction to trauma, but I do know that your spiritual side is very much a part of who you are and how you cope with trauma and what you do in your work.
Okay, sure, thank you. It is for me, actually. I look back at my life where at a time in my life I was so dysregulated, I didn't understand. And I mean, if I had trouble connecting to others, I absolutely had trouble connecting to, I call the God of I call my higher power God. God, I know God was always there, always. I can look back and see all that now. But I was so, like I said, dysregulated, or I made people, my little g gods, so it's like I had that people pleasing thing that's still in me, that I consider myself a recovering people pleaser. I mean, it's okay to show up and want to help people, but I just took it way too far. And so that it was like the opposite. It's like I made people around me more on that, whatever you want to call it, that what I'm trying to say, like a pedestal. I put people on a pedestal. Today, the only entity that's theirs is my God. And so, and then it flows, so it's like the directions change. So like to me, getting myself regulated and where I'm at helps me to connect to God, and then God through me can help, be there for others. But I had that totally reversed. People were what I was looking at first. And then, of course, then the relationships, some of them were not healthy relationships. And then that I was continually dysregulated with all those things and just trying to, run around, just trying to figure all that out. And so I didn't know how to connect to God. And so I'm just so grateful today that's changed. And so I know I can't save anybody. I can't fix anybody. I know that deeply inside me now, but I can just show up and be there for others and allow God to work through me, and then let go, of me, because I felt like I had to hold on to that, fix you and save you, and that just made me a hot mess.
Yeah, exactly.
I was a hot mess trying to, because I just can't do that, so I know that's not our intention on this earth. Is, there's God that's greater than me, that God has that power, not I. So I just want to be able to show up for however God wired me in my original wiring. It got a little faulty along the way, but God created me to do certain things, and today I just want to show up and do that instead of allowing traumatic events to interfere with that.
It's very well said. I couldn't say that any better, because, we can't take ownership of everyone else's journey.
Right.
And just like we're doing this today in order to help, to encourage, I think everyone out there can relate just a little bit in one way or another to anxiety or depression, or feeling as if we've lived through something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's how we perceive it, right? It's it may be a big deal to me, but not to you, or vice versa. So, we just got to do the best we can. And if you'd like to learn more about trauma, anyone out there, they can look at, there's a lot of good reading. We have The Body Keeps the Score is one that we are looking at. And we're reading through that together. And there are lots of other good resources out there. And we'll continue talking about this, and we'll have another interview and some other things that we may follow up on in the future. Because I know that you do something, regularly. You're posting about trauma, and it's near and dear to your heart. So, but I thank you very, very much for all of your time and your attention. And I'll let you go back to your wonderful day with your horses. And
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Pixie.
Bye.